So the theory was that eventually people have to come back to work, right? But what does that look like in a post COVID or post pandemic world? The hypothesis that my partner and I came up with was that companies are going to downsize. They're going to want smaller spaces. They're still going to need space, but they're going to want smaller spaces. So we can position ourselves to acquire buildings that have sub 1,000 square foot office suites.
Carlos, thanks for coming on the show, man. Appreciate your time. Would love to hear about your background and all the stuff you're working on.
What's up, Mike? How are you? Happy to be here. Excited and humbled. I guess maybe you want me to start at the beginning, how I got started in real estate. What do you?
Yeah. Let's go way back from the point of conception.
I remember that remember that it was exciting. It was traumatic. It was memorable. Okay, let's go. Let's start around college time. Okay, so I'm a Miami guy.
Perfect.
I was born in Miami, Florida, into a Cuban family. So we're a traditional Latin family. Went to Catholic high school my whole life, and then went into engineering. I studied engineering, computer engineering, software engineering at the University of Miami. Went into the tech world, with a full-time W-2 job, thinking I was pretty much set for life. It was 2008, so that's about the time when the financial crisis was sort of ramping up. And it was a big reality check, just because, my first job right out of college, I was working at Yahoo. There was a big layoff, like 6 months in, as a result of the financial crisis, and that sort of opened my eyes to the fact that a quote unquote steady career is really not a steady career. And I started reading a bunch of books, discovered real estate. Before I knew it, I owned a duplex. My wife and I had just gotten married, so we purchased a duplex, lived in half of it, and then just rented out the other half. Kind of caught the bug. Became very obsessed with this concept of having passive income, of having income that essentially comes to you whether you get out of bed in the morning or not. And this idea of having multiple lines of income to sort of hedge yourself against any sort of downfall, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a full-time job, you have one source of income. You get fired from that job, that's it. You're basically wiped out. You own 10 different single-family homes. You've got 10 different lines of income. The likelihood of you going out of business is not as high as you getting fired from a full-time job. So, kind of got obsessed with the real estate. Before I knew it, we owned, I think it was like 3 or 4, maybe 5 duplexes in Miami. Market turned, became very, very expensive. So, we started buying in the middle of the financial crisis when things were cheap. And around 2014, 15, things just kind of got really, really expensive. So I had to look outside of Miami, discovered another market, which is Kansas City, Missouri. Things were still kind of cheap there in 15, I think it was like 2015, 16, maybe. I think it was 2016 when I first bought a house in Kansas City. Little single family home. I paid $80,000 for it as kind of like a test to see if I could do this from far away. I had a property manager. Things were going well. We continued to grow that, purchased. I think it was at the end of that, I was probably, by 2020, I think I had probably maybe 15, 16 houses that we were just basically owning and cash flowing from afar. And then 2020, COVID hits, and things kind of shut down. Didn't do that many deals for a while. Assumed management of the portfolio around that time because the property manager just sort of started to fail. So that's how I kind of accidentally got into the property management business in 2020 when the property managers and basically everybody shut down. People stopped working and the portfolio started to really underperform. Mm-hmm. Lots of maintenance issues, a lot of crap started to pile up. Made this strategic decision in 2020 to fire that property manager, take over management. I was basically the middle of COVID. We were in the Bahamas for 3 months. We went to the Bahamas with the intention to stay there for 2 weeks, and then the COVID closures kind of like kept us there. So I'm in the Bahamas with really bad internet, and I decided to assume management of this portfolio that's like 3,000 miles away. So I had, the amount of problems I inherited were crazy. I mean, just deferred maintenance issues, tenants that hadn't been paying. It took me probably 6 months to a year to sort of stabilize the portfolio again. And in 2021, yes, I was introduced to Alfredo, who is my current partner. He is the son-in-law of a friend of mine here in Miami who had moved up to Kansas City. Coincidentally, he was in Kansas City. Very very into real estate. He had never done any real estate, but he had his PhD and he had studied. Uh, this neighborhood in Miami called Wynwood, which sort of had like this huge resurgence. He was basically obsessed with like development and neighborhood creation and that sort of stuff. Alfredo and I hit it off. We decided, hey, let's start buying some bigger deals together. He was in a kind of like a fundraising position in the University of Missouri up in Kansas City. So he had built up kind of like this network of higher net worth people, and he had sort of embedded himself within the community to a point where it became evident that my ability to manage property and underwrite deals and his ability to raise funds would allow us to be able to purchase bigger properties. And he and I got together. We had the intention of finding multifamily properties. And during COVID, I mean, this is already 2021 when like prices start to like go crazy. Yeah,
It's going
yeah. And there's
crazy.
just
Yeah.
like no multifamily anywhere, like nothing worth buying. We wanted value add. We wanted stuff we could, cash flow. It just didn't exist. And in 2021, the most distressed real estate or the most distressed asset class at the time was office, because nobody was
Mhm.
in an office, right? Everybody's working from home. So these like office landlords had like really really like lost their shirts, and that's what we ended up purchasing. Like those are the deals that we ended up finding,
Interesting.
were just these like derelict office buildings and office buildings with really high vacancies. And we did it. I mean, it was pretty scary to take on that asset class when none of us had ever done office before. We had no idea how to lease office. We had no idea how to run office. We had to figure it all on our own. But it's been like 2 years. We own two office buildings. We have a retail, like a little strip mall in Kansas City, and we're about to close next week on another retail property. So we sort of like kind of accidentally fell into the commercial side of real estate when we were trying to be residential people. So that's interesting how that
Yeah.
sort of played out. And I'm convinced that I'm pretty much done with residential. I prefer commercial so much better, so much easier to manage, so much easier to run. So I think that's what we're kind of gonna kind of be doing for the next couple of years, hopefully. And that's pretty much
Yeah.
the story in a nutshell.
Awesome.
I don't know if you have any questions you want to dig into anything.
No, I think that's the show, Carlos. Thanks for coming
Nice.
on. No, I'm kidding. But no, that's fascinating though. Like there's a lot to unpack there, and I guess just to note on the end there, the fact that when there was the ultimate, I guess, like fire, right? The ultimate sort of emergency with this asset class being the office spaces, everyone was running away from that, like fleeing from it. And you just said, nope, that's what I'm going to pursue, which is super, super interesting. So we'll dive into that in a sec. But I want to go back to kind of the start with your engineering background, because that's always, I always vibe with that really well, because I have a super similar backstory to you, where I went to school, got an engineering degree. I worked at Boeing, right, which was like the big company that had kind of made it once you'd been there. And while I was there, this was like 2013, 14, 15. They're having layoffs and all this sort of stuff, but ultimately I just like hated it. And similar to you, I started reading books about passive income and got into real estate afterwards. After I quit, I actually quit. I laid myself off so that I had to figure stuff out as opposed to getting like laid off. But there's such a parallel of people that are like start in engineering and like get into real estate. Like that is such a common trend that we see for some reason. And I don't know if it's just like the analytical nature of real estate. It just like sits well with engineers or what. But it's super common. Like we've had so many guests that have that same story. So I think that's pretty cool. So I guess that transition when you got laid off. You say you read books. Did you ever go back to an engineering job, or were you just
I
like
was
done with it
never
from
laid
that
off.
point?
I was there.
Oh, you're
I
laid
worked
off.
there for
Okay,
9
gotcha,
years. In that 9 year period, I sort of created or I built up the portfolio, and then I got to a point where the portfolio was cash flowing enough. And then, like you, I laid myself off in
gotcha.
2016. So
Yeah, gotcha. No, that's cool. Sorry, I
yeah,
misunderstood
that
that.
wasn't clear. My bad.
But yeah, yeah, no, no, that's still cool though. So you started into that, and so you did that over 9 years. You started buying those properties. So when I guess did you actually leave your engineering job?
It was in 2016, finally, when my second son was born.
2016.
I went out on
Nice.
paternity leave and never came back.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, okay, that's cool. And then so you started buying those duplexes in Miami, which is great. And then something that stood out to me too, which I think is hilarious, is you said that Miami started to get too expensive. And this is back in 2014, 15, right? And that's when you started to look in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Um, what were the prices like that you're thinking that? Because those same duplexes must be worth two and a half
Yeah.
times that now.
I don't remember what the prices were. I just remember not being able to like get any deals to pencil out, like because I'm a cash flow guy,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to make a return.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember just like underwriting deal after deal after deal, and just things just got really really expensive. Miami's a very very unique market because it's not really governed heavily by like normal market fluctuations. You have a lot of foreign capital coming in from different countries with totally different motivations, right? Like if you have a country like Venezuela that totally the economy totally collapses, all of the wealth in that country immediately comes out and they go straight to Miami and they just start buying condos, and they have no intention of cash flowing. It's mostly just like wealth preservation and defense against
Yeah.
like a collapsing economy. So when you're competing with that kind of money that has zero interest in value adding and zero interest in cash flow, it's hard to be a real estate investor in a market like that. And we see that time and time
Yeah.
again in this market, and especially now after COVID, with like the Florida becoming this crazy state that everybody wants to invest in. That's been even an additional sort of driver for prices to go up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I didn't realize that about Miami. So you see that a lot in Pacific Northwest markets too, up through Canada, like Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, with Chinese, I guess like billionaires basically come in buying like office buildings, and they'll just like let them sit vacant because it's
Yeah,
wealth
same thing
preservation, like you
happens here
said.
with
Because
condos.
the
Miami, there's
mm-hmm,
whole condo
yeah,
buildings that are basically like 80% vacant because just money
really,
that's parked there and sitting there. So
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, so that's funny because that like just artificially affects the prices because I would imagine they're not necessarily going to be paying true prices for them either. Are they just like doing like are they like way
yeah,
overpaying for stuff? Or are they just
yeah.
going
I
from
mean,
like volume
they're
and buying a bunch of
overpaying,
them?
and they're not paying a price for a condo so that they can make a 7% cash on cash return, right? They don't care about the rents. They don't care about the cap rate. They just need to get their money out of their country and put it somewhere quickly. You also have like these visa programs. I'm not an expert, where you have investors that get to invest a certain amount of money in the country, so they'll do that to get the visa. And yeah, there's constantly countries that are like going under. Like now, there's speculation or talk
Mm-hmm.
about Colombia. There's always some Latin American country that's going communist at any given moment, and all the wealth is
Yeah.
leaving that state. And usually they come to Miami. Another factor is New Yorkers, for example, during COVID, when everything is shut down in New York. There's a lot of New York investors and New York people just that moved to Miami and then stayed here, and they're used to paying New York
Mm-hmm.
Manhattan prices. Then they come to Miami where things relative to their prices are a lot cheaper. So they feel they're getting a deal when in reality they're probably overpaying relative to the market, and then that drives up prices as well. So there's like so many little nuances there that just affect Miami as a whole, that just make it difficult to
Yeah.
compete as a cash flow guy.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we experienced similar here. So I'm in Spokane, Washington, on the border with Idaho, and we had tons of people move here from places like Seattle or San Francisco or those sort of things. Same sort of situation. They used to paying $900,000 for a 3-bed, 2-bath house in Seattle, and they come over here and they can have 5-bed, 3-bath with a pool on several acres for less than that. So they just come and they just start
Right.
snapping everything up. And there's real estate that I bought in 2018, like single family houses that I cash out refied in 2021 for 2.5 times what I paid for them 3 years earlier. It's just crazy. So no, that's interesting. So I guess as you started to go to that Kansas City market, you were looking for property, single family homes there. Were you like working with a realtor? Were you buying from like a turnkey provider? Because virtual investing is something that a lot of people ask
Yeah,
me
it's hard.
about.
It was easy at first. I was buying from a turnkey provider. I think turnkey guys they sort of they start off good, and then they kind of as the market
Yeah.
turns, they don't really adapt very well, which I think is what happened there around 2020 or in 2020 when COVID was sort of like ramping up. Yeah, he just deals dried up right when the turnkey guys they rely
Mm-hmm.
on the deal flow to keep them in business, and then the property management is just sort of like a loss leader. And then when the deal flow came to a halt during 2020, then they had no cash flow coming in from that, and then the property management just sort of failed. And that's just what happened
Yeah.
there. It was unfortunate. I had a lot of houses, so I needed to do something, and that's when I just used my engineering, my problem solving engineering skills to come in and set up the property management business. And before I knew it, I had people asking me to manage their properties. So I accidentally became a property manager and then set up a property management company as a defensive measure to turn around my own portfolio. Realized I was really good at it, and just the rest is history.
Yeah. So I guess what did that look like standing that up from a distance? Because at that point, what was your portfolio like
I
in
think it
Kansas
was
City?
15 or 16 single family homes.
Okay.
It was a real pain in the ass. I had to set up a Buildium account and basically onboard every single tenant. There were 16 of them. I had to
Hmm.
contact all of them virtually, send them letters, um, and one by one, just add them to the platform, have conversations with every single one of them so they can give me their laundry list of repairs and deferred maintenance and complaints. And it was rough for a couple of months there. I had to find handymen and contractors to help me. You go on Bigger Pockets, you go on different forums to sort of ask people for advice, and little by little, you just kind of piece it together. It took like 6 months, I would say, to start sort of cash flowing again in a meaningful way.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was rough. I mean, I'm used to working hard, so it wasn't difficult to put in the hours. But yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. What did the number one thing that people always ask about when it comes to virtual investing? They're trying to manage it themselves, especially, is the process of getting tenants in there. Right. You can have people fill out applications, see credit scores, see background checks, all that sort of stuff. But like for like showing the properties, right, and going about like dealing with the general maintenance, doing all that, those sort of things, for some reason, even though like what I always tell people is you should use the same principles you're doing in your local market. If you own 16 houses locally and you're having to drive around and do all that yourself, you're not doing something right. But doing it virtually, how did you, I guess, start to approach that, especially since you are self-managing? Did you find like full-time staff that was there that was doing all this
Yeah,
stuff for
it's
you?
really hard. It's actually been an exercise in humility because, yes, I'm used to being that guy that just gets in the car and goes and does the thing, right? And in this
Mm-hmm.
case, I find myself a lot of times just totally helpless because I'm far away and I have to rely on other people. So yeah, I've had to sort of learn to rely on other people. Been lucky because I found one. Now I have a partner, Alfredo, who's there, who's physically in
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City.
Yeah, that helps.
But we have an employee now. We have one employee who sort of floats around to our different buildings, and then we have another partner slash employee slash investor who owns a management company locally, and we basically outsource all the repairs and maintenance to him, and all the unit turns. So I got people on the ground that I rely on. It's just difficult. It was difficult to sort of ramp that up and get that. going. I went through a bunch of different handymen that overcharged me in the first couple of months, and I was
Yep.
desperate to just get stuff done. But eventually you sort of get back on track, and the right people get put in your path, and it's just a matter of you choosing them and making sure you compensate them well. But at this point, we have enough the units under management where we can have an employee, right, and we have enough volume where we can keep people busy, and we've got a pretty good process going. So, but yeah, in the beginning it was tough, man, because you
Nice.
don't have that much, and you're
Yeah.
working with almost nothing. So
Yeah, yeah, it is tricky, and it's funny. Like a lot of the stuff that you're describing, though, those same issues exist if you're doing it locally. But for some reason, I think because people can go to the property themselves, that becomes like the bailout. But realistically, if you want to grow this into a legitimate business, you need to not
yeah,
be doing that if you're
yeah.
investing things locally. But um, it's funny. Do you know Kurt Booker
Of course,
from?
I know
He's also
Kurt
a
Booker.
GoAbundance
Yeah,
guy.
I wish I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
Kurt
He was on
Booker.
our.
To be honest, kidding. I love Kurt.
He's great. He's a character, but he was on our show a little while back, and he does all of his stuff in New
Yeah,
Orleans. Yeah, he has a bunch of properties in New Orleans that he manages from North Florida. And we were asking him that same question about screening tenants, and he goes, "Oh, I just have them do like a Zoom call to do a walkthrough." And my business partner, he's not here today, he was busy on dad duty. He said, "Well, we couldn't do that because our like a lot of the tenants that we have, they wouldn't be able to figure out how to do like a mobile Zoom call." And Kurt just goes, "Perfect. That means they don't qualify to be your tenants if they can't figure out something as basic as that." I'm like, that's the
yeah.
easiest way to pre-screen future problems right there is if they can't figure out how to use a
Kurt
mobile
is
phone.
one of the funniest people I know, man. Like he's like the type of person that posts so many things on social media that I wish I had the guts to do myself. Like, posting something that I think
No,
of but then
right?
don't do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. There's so many ways to weed out the idiots, and a lot of
Yeah.
landlords don't do it. So the screening
I know.
process really is like kind of your make and break when it comes to property management.
Hmm.
If you don't put in the time and the effort to screen a person and put in a very high quality individual up front, then you're screwing yourself over in the long term. So that's a key thing. And yeah, if a person can't figure out how to do a FaceTime call, how are they going to figure out how to pay their rent
Yeah.
online?
Exactly right, and it's just it's like the soft test as well. So many people focus on credit score and those sorts of things, which is obviously important, but especially when you're doing stuff remotely, you got to look at like, is this person going to make the actual management process for you difficult or not? Outside of like them being a credible person, that's a very
Yeah,
important thing to
and it's
look
as
at.
easy as a phone call. You pick up the phone and talk to them. You can sort of
Yeah.
figure out if the person's an idiot or not. So,
Oh, dude, absolutely. Yeah, you're definitely not wrong. Cool. Well, that's good stuff. So you started to grow that up, and then you transitioned over to the commercial side. So let's start about that. Like, you ran towards the fire when everyone else was running away from it. I mean, I guess first off, like, how did you have the gusto to do that? And like what, and also too, what kind of office spaces are we talking about here? Are these like, is this like a building? Is this like a strip mall? Is this like office condos? Where did you sort of find your
okay,
niche there?
so the theory was that eventually people have to come back to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what does that look like in a post
Yeah.
COVID or post pandemic world? The hypothesis that my partner and I came up with was that companies are going to downsize. They're going to want smaller spaces. They're still going to need space, but they're going to want smaller spaces. So if we can position ourselves to acquire buildings that have sub 1,000 square foot office suites, then we will be well positioned to capitalize on the return to office, which we're already starting to see all these tech companies hiring people
Mm-hmm.
that don't come back to work. So it's happening already. What we did was we bought buildings with really small office suites. And even in some of our other buildings where we have like 4,500 square foot spaces, we're starting to cut those up into like small 500 square foot spaces because we're finding that there's a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who were sort of forced into entrepreneurship because of COVID, because they were fired from their jobs, and now are finding themselves with businesses that are actually doing well and are needing to go into an office because working from home is no longer working for them. So we're kind of like in this
Mm-hmm.
unique position to be able to help these like rising star entrepreneurs and like business owners, small business owners get their first office spaces. And we have these really small suites. I mean, I can offer a 500 square foot building, or sorry, 500 square foot office suite for $500 a month or $600 a month. And that's really doable, really easily and achievable for a small business owner to do. And that kind of gets their foot in the door, gives them an office, and allows them to continue growing their business. So we've had some real good success with that. We've even started to like acquire buildings with that mentality in mind, like looking at the larger spaces and figuring out how can we cut them up into as little spaces as possible. Gives you economies of
Yeah.
scale because you have now multiple tenants versus one big tenant that can just blow out of there and then
Mm-hmm.
leave you with a huge vacancy. And then it makes the leasing process a lot easier, right? Because we can there's so many small business owners, right? There's so many people looking for office space now, trying to get out of the house that are looking for these tiny spaces, and we're ready to give them those spaces. So there's not a lot of people catering to that crowd. So that was the strategy we took. Thank God it worked out. I mean, we're now starting to see like really like a big uptick in leasing activity in the past. I want to say 6 to 12 months. It was pretty slow in the beginning, and we also didn't know what we were doing, right? Like we didn't know how to lease office. Now we're starting to learn. And my partner, I now have two partners, it's Alfredo and Jake, and they both do the leasing, and we've gotten a really good process down for getting tenants in there and signed quickly. And they're really easy. I mean, it's so easy to get a 500 square foot user in the door within a month. So yeah, it's been good.
That's
And then
awesome.
we have two office buildings that are kind of that style in Kansas City, and then we have another one that is a kind of like a retail. It's like retail on the first floor and then office on the second floor. That one has been really good. We bought it with like a very high vacancy, and we just we marathoned it this past year, and we got it to like 99% occupancy. So that one's kicking ass, and we want to do more of them. And it's still an inexpensive market. I mean, you can still buy below replacement cost in Kansas City, so the acquisition
Sweet.
costs are a lot less than in any other market or in many other markets. And there's a lot of distressed stuff in that market. I mean, there's just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
vacant buildings and just forgotten properties that you can pick up for real cheap. And if you just put a little bit of effort, man, like it's not that hard to paint a building and put the floors in,
Yeah.
right? Like it's really easy at the end of the day. So we're buying for pretty cheap, which allows us to offer cheap rents. It's another thing. Like we bought I think it was I think the Chrysler building is 24,000 square feet. We paid 350,000 for it. We paid like $12 a foot
Wow.
for this building. Total distress, like
Yeah.
basically vacant and had been overrun by crackheads and homeless people. We kicked everybody out. We put in new floors. We painted the building. We've been turning all the units, and we're like I think we're the last time I checked, we were almost at 70% uh, occupied on that building in less than a year. So it's not that hard, man. Like, and if you're buying it for that cheap, you can offer
Yeah.
cheap rents. We're the cheapest office building in Kansas City, so as long as you can keep the prices low, people will keep coming in. And if somebody leaves, we'll get a new one in there tomorrow. So it's not a big deal.
Perfect. So, like, what sort of rents do you get for that? Like, that's a super interesting niche. I mean, it makes perfect sense what you're saying, and like, even me and Dan, we've talked about getting a space, not even necessarily that we need it, but just so that Dan has kids at home, he wants to get out of the house. We want to have like a in person podcast guest, things like that. We can like have a recording studio there, but we want to be able to rent out the other portions of it. But you're actually cutting them up into smaller pieces to make that more viable, um, which is awesome. Like, what do people pay for like a 400 square foot
Yeah, I
office in
think
that
so. The
market? Like
Chrysler
to
building
compare to
only paid
resales?
350,000 for. We put another 350 into it to fix it, so we're in for about 700. I think that one's at $11 a foot, and then on the
Okay.
smaller units, the 500 square feet, I think we're averaging probably 13 a foot. Basically, rule of
Oh
thumb
wow.
is
Okay.
500 square foot for $500 a month, which I think
Okay.
I
500.
guess that
Okay. I
comes
was
out
I
to
was trying.
$12 a foot. So it's about $12 a foot average. So it's really inexpensive rent. And
Yeah.
but our basis is so low that we're able to offer that, and we're literally the cheapest office building in the entire Kansas City market at the moment. So
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I was just trying to do some math there. So you have 500 square feet for $500 a month, and he says 24,000 square feet.
yes,
Okay, so just like, so what is that? Like what's your total if it's fully rented
at
out
100%, it would be
that you can expect?
almost 24,000 a month. If it were 100%,
That's crazy.
we're averaging about 90% occupancy, which we're defying the market there. I think the market vacancy in office is like at 25%. So if we're above that, we're defying the market. So it's sort of the
Yeah.
milestone that we try to hit always is 90% occupancy. You're never really going to be at 100%.
Yeah. And then what are the expenses associated with that? So you probably, I mean, it's obviously not going to be triple net, I would imagine. You probably have to cover all the electricity, water,
Yeah, that's office is full
internet.
service. So you pay for everything, cleaning, everything. And then let's see, I'll pull up my little pro forma here. Our total expenses are, and that's adding in 20 grand in repairs and maintenance. That's like an inflated number, about 100
for all the office parties that they have.
about 130,000 a year on a revenue of 275,000. So
130 grand net.
16% cap rate. Yeah,
That's sick. That's sick.
So I mean, once we refinance that one, what's the cash on cash return on negative? Once we get all our money.
Yeah, well, it's infinite at that point, right? But so if it's a 16 cap rate, you're going to go and refinance it. The bank's going to look at it as let's say like a 7 or 8 on like the high end, maybe with the market, things like that. You're going to pull out fat money and still have a really, really strong position. That's a sick.
Yeah, the only trouble now we're having is that, one, rates are going up, right? And they're going up quickly, which on this deal doesn't really matter because at a 16% cap rate, 8%, what is an 8% rate on a mortgage? But the issue we're having now is that all these banks have like these seasoning periods. So like we're just now getting to 70% occupancy. So I can't refinance today. I'd have to give a bank like a year or 6 months worth of revenue. So who knows what the rates are going to be at 6 to 12 months from now. So it's kind of a mixed bag there. But yeah, I mean, in theory, once we go ahead and refinance, we'll pull more than our initial capital out, and let's go and we'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like at the very least, you're sitting in a position where you have a 16% cap rate.
Yeah, it's great cash flow, right? So it's a win-win no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, like there are people that are doing these big value adds where they're having millions of dollars tied up and they're not cash flowing at all who have that same stressor. And you definitely don't want to be one of those people. You're in an awesome position. That's super cool.
The problem is now that the standard is set, right? So I look at every deal like this deal, and now I can't find any deals because I'm looking for that like crazy smoking hot deal. And honestly, when we were buying this deal, my partner and I were like crapping our pants. I mean, we were so scared because we had never done office. And in the middle of a pandemic, we're buying this overrun building. But it's been a year, and it's one of the best deals we've ever done. And now that becomes the standard for the next deals. And we're so conservative that we don't do that many deals. So, like you said, you have a bunch of guys that have tied up millions of dollars on a deal that's going to cash flow at 6%. Eventually, we are looking for these like extreme value add deals that can give us those 16% plus returns. So we'll do less deals, but we'll make more money on the deals that we do. It's a quality over quantity type. So.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Yeah, you got a taste for unicorns in your first hunt. You can't go back to eating chicken after that. But no, that's super cool, man. I love it. All right. Oh, sorry, my dog's gonna go off here.
Can't you just edit it out?
Yeah. Well, we'll edit it. I got a producer; he'll edit it out, or we'll leave it in for audio texture.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see how it works. But give it 1 second.
I think he disagrees with our choices, our choice of career there. That dog, not into the 16 caps.
Yeah. But awesome. Well, good stuff, Carlos. I'd love to dive into our end of show questions here as we get towards the end of the show. So first off, our first question, which is always the most fun question, I think, is what is your craziest real estate investing story? So this can be a big win, a big loss, dealing with a crackhead, like, having to do anything in between. The only rule is you're not allowed to tell a story about discovering a dead body in a property, because people always use that
No,
as
I
the bridge
haven't.
story. And
No,
it just
okay.
gets,
Well, the Chrysler Building, the one we've been talking about, has a few gems in it. I mean, one, the building had been overrun by this guy named Richard McNeil. I'll never forget that name. He was the slumlord that was basically running the building, and he was
yeah,
essentially a squatter, and he was charging people $500 a month, or like whatever bucks a month, to like sublet these huge units from him. He had the electricity turned off on the building, so tenants didn't even have electricity, no AC. Imagine like during winter time. Total slumlord.
oh, jeez.
Basically, we had to get that guy cash for keys. Once we closed the building on the building, we had to basically give him $2,000. I had my partner Steve meet him in the parking lot with $2,000 and a thing to sign that says, "I will never come back to this building again. Give me the keys." And right then and there, we changed the locks. That guy had so many characters in that building. I mean, there was a homeless guy that had like like five bikes just in one of the offices, and he was working in there. And we told the guy he needed to leave. And I drove up to the building one day, and this homeless guy is like packing up all his stuff, and all his bikes are outside, and he's walking around, and he has a machete like in his backpack, just like sticking out. And I'm thinking, who is this guy with the machete leaving the building? And Steve was like, "Yeah, he was." I found him on the second floor. He was living there. Then
Oh,
I went into the bathroom, and somebody had defecated all over the floor. It was probably that guy. It was just shit everywhere. Like I have a video of me discovering smears of shit all over the floor, which wasn't there like 2 days before, so it was fresh. We found like jugs of urine like in the building. I have pictures of all this. It's gross. Like just like imagine like a glass jug full of yellow liquid. It was just piss. The guys, people were peeing in
yeah.
it and then just leaving it. It's just crazy. Just the crazy the amount of things that you go through or that you discover when you pick up these like distressed properties. And it's also like incredible how these like landlords and these owners just allow their properties to end up in such a state of disrepair. Like you really have to try hard for your property to end up that bad, you know? And you end up selling it
Oh,
for
yeah.
350,000 because you're a loser and you didn't do anything for years on that property. So
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, man, you're speaking my language. We're residential wholesalers is like our main business model, and so we see all that same sort of stuff. And it is a special level of negligence
yeah,
to let the properties get
it gives us
to
a bad
that. And
name. It
the
gives
thing
us a
that
bad name. That's why the word slumlord
it does,
exists, right? And you tell people you're in real estate, they assume
hmm
you're one of those, right? You know, that becomes the standard, which is
exactly, yeah. And we've bought a lot of properties from landlords like that. And the thing that really sucks is because of these past couple of years, how the market went. A lot of them made off like
yeah.
bandits
Well,
with
hey,
those
man,
properties,
the
which
tides are
is
turning,
super
man. Property
unfortunate.
values are going down. I'm having a hard time selling some of my smaller stuff now, so we'll see what happens.
hmm Yeah, yeah, but yeah, that's good. You got the full ringer, got the full
The guy with a
windows
machete, man,
experience with
that's
that
crazy.
one.
So funny. Like he's got like five bikes. Like, what do you do with all those bikes? Does he ride them all? Did he
I don't
steal? He
know.
probably stole them. He was probably stealing them to sit them and sell them. I don't even know. People,
Yeah, maybe that. I mean, dude, it's just like the Central Americans that are parking their capital in Miami condos. That's like the homeless version. He has parking his
yeah.
capital in his basement,
There's
so he has
whole
a hard
condo
hustle.
buildings actually in Miami that are just full of bikes. Just buildings with a bunch of bikes. In them. We don't know why.
there, yeah, there probably is too. That's funny. All right, second question. What is the number one piece of advice you would give to a new investor looking to get started, or to a small time investor looking to take their business to the next level?
Yeah, man. I mean, taking action, I think, is key because a lot of people just never take that first step just out of fear. You're always going to be scared. It's always going to be scary, and you're always going to be leveling up. So that first deal is probably the scariest deal you'll ever do. Just do it. If it makes sense, take the emotion out of it and do it. But one of the best things I ever did was buy that duplex. You know, when my wife and I got married, that was our first house, and it basically paid for itself. The rent next door paid for us to live for free. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be where I am today because we wouldn't have been able to save as much. We wouldn't have been able to purchase as many following duplexes as we did. So, something like that where you can house hack or just figure out a way to creatively get into real estate in a relatively inexpensive way. And that's how really you're going to start building up that snowball that, will just grow and grow and grow. But yeah, take action. Forget about the fear. Don't think about it too much. If it makes sense on paper, then just go for it. At the end of the day, it's not that hard to manage property. So.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The key to all success is, consistent action over time.
Right.
And most people, they never even start with the action part. So the success never comes. Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Last question. Where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you?
Find me on Instagram. I'm not that great about posting. I'm a horrible social media. But yeah, my Instagram is the Carlos Rovira. Yes, I had to put a THE in front of my name because some other guy took my name. And same with Twitter, the Carlos Rovira. You can message me on either of those, and I'm pretty good about responding. I'm not great about posting. I tend to post more when I'm on vacation and I have a nice beach to show off. But yeah, that's where you can find me, and I'm good about responding to stuff. So that's pretty much it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, definitely reach out to Carlos, you guys. Ask him about how you can buy 16 cap office buildings. And if you have something like that, he definitely wants to buy them from you. So, just lots of good stuff here, Carlos. Thanks so much for coming on. So, yeah, give Carlos a follow, give Carlos a follow, you guys. Appreciate you all listening. Please go and leave a 5-star review for the show, where you listen to your podcast, and share it with anyone else who has any interest in real estate investing, especially if they want to get into commercial stuff. Carlos has cracked a code here that is pretty unique. So go and share it with everybody. And aside from that, you guys, if you want to learn how to start getting off-market leads, you can go to collectingkeyspodcast.com/free and get our free 5-step guide to start generating off-market leads. And that can get you started finding all sorts of opportunities all by yourself without having to rely on realtors, wholesalers, or anyone else. Besides that, guys, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to y'all next week.